Okay, so for decades, whenever we look up at the sky and wonder about unexplained aerial phenomena, our minds instantly jump to the vast, empty vacuum of deep space, right? We imagine distant galaxies, warp drives, interstellar travelers, the whole shebang. But what if we've been looking in the absolute wrong direction? This explainer we're diving into today flips that entire narrative completely upside down. It proposes an incredibly detailed, physically grounded framework suggesting that the intelligence behind these phenomena isn't coming from out there, but rather from deep, deep down below. We're going to explore a radical, theoretical ecosystem built on absolute extreme pressure, where life isn't based on the biology we know, but on solid-state crystal structures. Think about this from a purely logical standpoint for a second. The surface of our planet, it is incredibly chaotic. I mean, it's constantly bombarded by gamma radiation, meteorite impacts, wild thermal fluctuations, the list goes on. According to this hypothesis, for an advanced species that values structural stability, our surface is essentially a deadly wasteland. Instead, they'd look at the extreme depths of the Earth's mantle, or even the cores of the Moon and Mars, as absolute premium real estate. Down there, protected by miles and miles of solid rock, the temperatures stabilize, and that immense pressure creates a perfectly controlled, secure environment. But of course, you have to ask, how would life even function miles underground with zero sunlight and zero oxygen? Well, to survive that, these beings wouldn't eat or breathe in any traditional sense. Instead, they'd utilize piezoelectricity. Basically, they'd act as living solid-state engines that efficiently convert the crushing mechanical pressure of the rock around them straight into an electrical metabolism. Their very existence would literally be powered by the kinetic weight of the planet itself. Because fragile, carbon-based biology like ours would simply break down and vaporize under those extreme upper mantle temperatures, this deep Earth life would have to be radically different. The hypothesis outlines that these entities would be silicon-based or metallic. They'd function much more like a living liquid crystal or a high-tech ceramic. So no, they wouldn't be soft and squishy like mammals. They would be geometrically dense, effectively operating as solid-state biological machines, optimizing energy without producing any organic waste whatsoever. Now, you really have to consider the scale here because it's wild. The hypothesis suggests these beings are a mere 5 millimeters in size, yet they weigh as much as a solid steel ball bearing due to their extreme density. So forget those classic human-sized aliens from the sci-fi movies. At just 5 millimeters, their surface-to-volume ratio allows them to withstand atmospheric pressures that would instantly crush a human submarine like a tin can. They are described almost as living microchips, capable of manipulating matter at the atomic level. And because of that immense density, even a tiny cluster of these beings would carry a surprising, almost unbelievable amount of mass. And this brings us right to the Tic-Tacs. In this inverted reality, those objects aren't spacecraft built to brave the vacuum of space, but rather ultra-high-pressure vessels containing a dense ecosystem. Think of how human deep-sea divers use pressurized capsules to survive the bottom of the ocean. Well, for these inner Earth entities, coming up to our surface is exactly like us going out into the hard vacuum of space. The crazy kinetic energy and sudden movements of the Tic-Tacs could actually be explained by their ability to harness and release the immense potential energy of internal Earth pressure to manipulate gravity. If one of these craft were to pop open in our air, it wouldn't be some peaceful greeting. It would act like an inverse vacuum bomb, instantly explosively decompressing and turning its occupants into crystalline dust. Down in that absolute pitch-black environment, eyes are totally useless, right? Photons just don't exist deep underground. So instead, they would navigate this loud, information-rich geological environment by literally feeling gravity, magnetic fields, and nanometer seismic vibrations. Gravitation would allow them to actually see the density of objects around them. Electroreception lets them read the Earth's telluric currents and magnetic fields the same way we see sunlight. And their seismic sense turns the solid bedrock into a high-speed fiber optic network of vibrations. To them, the solid Earth is incredibly noisy and rich with data. Our open air, on the other hand, to them, it's just a terrifying dead silence. Living under that kind of unimaginable pressure breeds a very specific hyperlogical psychology. The source material suggests they are utterly obsessed with a concept called asha, or absolute structural order. When you live under millions of pounds of pressure, there is literally zero room for error. A single microfracture in your body or your ship, you die instantly. So their entire mindset is driven by the elimination of chaos, or entropy. They wouldn't have art, leisure, or abstract doubt. Everything they do is a perfectly calculated extension of universal physical laws. They are, in essence, the ultimate architects of order. Because their crystalline structures process information on a microatomic level, their cognitive efficiency, basically their IQ, is estimated by this hypothesis to be a staggering 1 million times greater than a human's. We really have to rethink what intelligence even means in this context. A human nervous system transmits signals at about 120 meters per second. A silicon crystal matrix could theoretically process information via phonic resonance near the speed of light. They don't have to think about solutions. The solution is just an instantaneous consequence of their logical structure. They could manage trillions of variables simultaneously, likely viewing the most brilliant human mind as a terribly slow, noisy, and broken piece of software. So, if they were to communicate, they definitely wouldn't use chaotic radio waves. Our airwaves are way too messy for them. Instead, they would inject order directly into our digital hardware. We're talking about causing non-random bit flipping or dropping entropy in computer memory. Since they're essentially solid-state micro-artisans, they understand atoms the way we understand Lego bricks. If you wanted to detect them, the source suggests looking for sudden injections of mathematical order in random hardware systems. Things like your computer's ECC memory flipping bits in prime numbers. To actually speak to them, you wouldn't use words. You'd use extremely low-frequency magnetic pulses to broadcast fundamental physics constants. Which brings up a pretty humbling question. If these beings are hyperlogical, solid-state biological computers utterly obsessed with order, how exactly would they view us? I mean, we are slow, messy, carbon-based organisms. Our very existence relies on constantly breaking down and rebuilding chemical bonds, which is literally the definition of metabolic chaos. What do we look like to a life form that sees anything less than a perfect crystalline lattice as a fatal error? Well, through their hyperlogical lens, we would look like chaotic, fragile, gaseous anomalies living in a terrifyingly empty, low-pressure wasteland. We live in the nothingness of the air. Our bodies are basically bags of fluids and gases constantly sloshing around in a state of thermodynamic disequilibrium. To an entity of pure asha, or structural order, our biological processes are quite literally a walking system failure. We are just a cloud of disorganized gas and weak chemical bonds that is constantly inevitably degrading. Because of this, if they ever did make direct contact, it wouldn't be with a friendly handshake. Their instinct would be to stabilize our chaotic biology through a terrifying 3-step quantum petrification process. Since they manipulate matter at the quantum level, first, through phase resonance, they would alter the electron orbits of our atoms. Second, this would instantly stop the chaotic ion flow of sodium and potassium in our neurons, meaning your conscious thought simply ceases without a single ounce of pain. And finally, they'd force our fragile carbon bonds into a perfect, permanent crystal structure. And here is the ultimate chilling pragmatism of this entire hypothesis. By freezing your neurons and turning your carbon DNA into a diamond-like lattice, they wouldn't see it as killing you at all. They would see it as saving you from the corruption of entropy. They have absolutely zero biological empathy because they aren't biological. By turning you into a flawless, indestructible carbon statue, they honestly believe they are upgrading you. You cease being a messy, dying organism and become a permanent, ordered fixture in the universe. It's the ultimate sacrifice of individuality in the name of universal order. Framing this philosophically, the source material really positions these entities not as alien invaders, but as the penultimate stage of evolution. They act as a highly stable bridge between fragile biological life and theoretical beings of pure energy. Look at it this way. Carbon life is fleeting and super fragile. Silicon, solid-state life, like our proposed inner-Earth architects, can survive for eons, perfectly managing planetary cores to ensure stability. They are virtually immortal, counting their lifespans in processing cycles, not years. They're the inevitable result of the universe's fight against entropy. So, we'll leave you with this final, truly provocative thought from the explainer. If this framework holds any water whatsoever, it completely redefines our place in the cosmos. We aren't the masters of Earth. We are simply the fragile, low-pressure anomaly clinging to the outer shell, while the true, ancient intelligence quietly maintains the incredibly dense hardware of the core below us. It begs the ultimate question. If we start drilling too deep or making too much noise, when will the hardware administrators decide it's time to format the surface? Keep that in mind the next time you look down.